Hi, and welcome to From Many People's Strength, the podcast that covers Saskatchewan politics and current events. And my name is Cory Johnson, and my pronouns are he and him.
My name is David Richards. My pronouns are he and him, or they and them.
Okay, so we've got 2-week-old news, we've got 1-week-old news, and we've got a lot of new news. But before we get to that, I posted the link to our YouTube on Reddit, on the Saskatchewan subreddit. I do this once a week. Apparently that's too much for some people. But somebody commented that we are just using left-wing talking points with zero nuance.
All right.
So I thought,
that's
okay,
fair. All right.
Sure, yeah. I thought maybe we could... what are some left-wing talking points, and why would we approach them with no nuance?
Gotcha. And, it's funny because there are certain things I don't approach with nuance. I'd like to think that on certain topics we do.
I think the nuance that perhaps you and I see between a left liberal-ish type and a left-wing anarchist, the nuance we see there, a conservative person might not see.
That's fair. That's fair. I always find it funny because I once in a single week, and I think probably even a single day, have had someone call me a close-minded right-wing conservative and a raging lefty socialist, literally back to back. So, and then been called a centrist and a moderate, both as a compliment and as an insult within similar turnaround times, right? They are what they are, right? I'm not sure what someone means by talking point. It's interesting. How do you define what a talking point is? Right. Typically, when I think of a talking point, I think of, for me, a talking point is someone who is like a politician themselves, or someone essentially representing a politician or a political movement.
Right.
And they avoid answering questions and just stick to sort of a regurgitated answer that is it's just a talking point. So one single data point that they go back to rather than expand on things. And I would argue I am significantly too verbose to speak in talking points. I ramble way too much to be considered a talking point because, I don't stay on topic very well.
that seems fair.
That's
to me.
The antithesis of a talking point, right? A talking point is you stick to one thing. Minimum wage should be $15 because it does these three things. And then anytime any topic of minimum wage comes up again, you go, well, minimum wage should be increased to $15 because it does these three things. Boom, boom, boom. And you don't go from that. If someone brings up a counter argument, you essentially ignore the counter argument and you stick to boom, boom, boom. And then the right does it too, the other way, right? And again, you and I probably notice it more from the right. Although I would say, I think when it comes to talking points, I think this may be one of the areas where the left does fall prey to some of the same bad habits the right does. I think the left does probably use talking points as much as the right does. It just tends to be people who are paid to be politicians, rather than just Joe on the street.
I think that the things that I would consider, because what I've considered talking points in the past would be things like you say, things that they repeat over and over again. When I say something like, let's defund the police, and I repeat that over and over again, I'm trying to send the message, defund the police, and that could be considered a defund the police talking point. And if somebody views that as a talking point, perhaps they won't hear the myriad reasons why one might believe in defunding the police.
Yeah. And for me, and again, maybe I'm just thinking of it in a more granular sense. To me, the talking point would be if you only had one between 1 and 3 reasons for why you want to defund the police. Like, defund the police isn't really a talking point so much as it is an ideology or an idea, right? Like, that is a concept. Right. The talking point would be picking 1 to 3 reasons why it's important to defund the police, and just anytime that topic comes up, you hammer home on those. Which, again, like, there probably are some things we do that with because they're the strongest arguments.
Right.
So
yeah, like, okay, so the episode that I shared was systemic racism in Saskatchewan.
Right.
So my assumption, and okay, in all fairness, I have now blocked this person. I'm not.
That's fair. Yeah.
I'm not actually going to engage with somebody that is, I feel, being willfully dishonest regularly.
Yeah.
But I do feel that,
and you're not blocking them just because of this one comment. We should be clear on that as well.
No, that's right. Like, and I feel like this idea of that we're just reciting talking points, I think it's an important idea that maybe we should address, right? Because I don't think we do that. I think that maybe we repeat some things, but I don't think we're just hammering home on 1 or 2 points. You know, I think that we do kind of try to explore the news, and you know, and I think we are trying to be as fair to the right as we can.
Yeah. Well, and it does come down to defining your terms as well as far as who is the right? Because I'm going to be a lot more fair to, or at least try to be a lot more fair to, you know, Brad Wall, Scott Moe than I am going to be to someone who is like bringing a Confederate flag to a Trump rally.
Yes.
Like, those are not like,
those are not equal.
Those are not equal. And when it comes to, if we're having a debate around, let's say we're having a debate around capital gains tax, and we're discussing what we need to manage our tax base, what's going to be more effective, a change in how we do capital gains taxes, or an increase to the marginal tax rate at certain areas. Like, those are things where I will absolutely entertain ideas that are different. We'll have a debate on that. Like, those are ideas in my mind worthy of discussion. Right. If someone comes along and is literally devaluing the humanity of someone I care about, that isn't something I'm willing to have a discussion on. That's just no, it isn't. You're wrong. Like, I'm okay with that being just, I'm close-minded about viewing that, right. Because that is a base moral framework. Like, that isn't something that I need to logic my way to. That is a base moral understanding. Now, where you go from there, if we start off with the base moral understanding that, you know, racism is bad, or a base moral understanding that we shouldn't treat, that people should not be negatively impacted, because of their sexual orientation. Like, if we start having that as our baseline, and ways of implementing that are different, then again, we're back to, okay, let's have a discussion. It depends on when and where and how that discussion comes about.
Fair.
But it again, when discussing things online as well, and in person too, I think part of it comes down to, in my mind, is the other person engaging with me in good faith. Right. If someone's engaging with me in good faith, absolutely. But a Nazi is inherently not engaging in good faith. Like, that is too different of a worldview for that to be a good faith discussion. So there's very little point. And I'm not saying this gentleman is a Nazi, but I'm saying, like, that's the extreme of it, right? So And like there probably are some left-wing talking points that have no nuance that I get frustrated with.
Well, I think like the way that I was trying to come up with ideas of what we use as maybe talking points, and like I'm starting to wonder, like, okay, so are we talking like, is systemic racism real? Is that like systemic racism is real? Is that a talking point, or is that just a thing that we're discussing?
Yeah,
and I don't know if somebody doesn't believe that it's real. Is there a way for us to get past that?
Yeah, and I think I know I try to systemic racism one. Like I said, I think discussed it even last week, where I try and break down why if you do not acknowledge the existence of systemic racism, it almost necessitates being racist, because and I don't want to rehash that whole argument, but I think
right.
And I guess the nature of a podcast, right? We're not hearing the other side, so maybe there is a brilliant counter argument to that that I've just never heard. But now that that's been established, I don't want to waste time reestablishing it every time. I think we now can have that base fundamental understanding. We've already essentially proven, using like a logical proof, that this, X is true, therefore we can build stuff upon that. Now, if something comes along later on and actually logically disproves that foundational sort of precondition for other arguments, the house of cards falls, and we do need to sort of go back to the beginning, and that may undermine some of our other beliefs. One talking point I think that I maybe was guilty of was the car issue with Mo, both the multiple drinking and driving, and the killing a woman. Those essentially are talking points, right? Like those are when a discussion comes up. I think both you and I were frustrated with how that didn't have an impact on the election as much as I think most people would normally think it should.
Yeah.
But I think we maybe use that as a talking point, that would coming back to that, Mo killed someone, that should be an issue. That was a talking point, maybe came back to a lot. So that's probably
a fair, I don't know. Is there other stuff? Like, okay, like our goals, like we're talking about things like human rights, and we're talking about equal treatment, and we both prefer that like people are taken care of by society if they can't take care of themselves. All this kind of things. Like, is some of our reasoning, is that like going to be considered a talking point?
Perhaps. I think we're at some point you do get into a bit of a semantics issue of how do you define it. And at that point it is what it is. Talking points are probably also not even an inherently bad thing. They're a way of staying focused and staying on message. They're a way of not getting distracted. I joked, when we first started talking about this, that, I'm not good at talking points because I get too off topic. Like, talking points may be is honestly a good thing for someone like me. If I ever run for office, having a list of talking points would be an important thing for me to have, because it means if I was coming in front of an electorate and I needed to present my case, I need to have that in short bullet form, so that when the time comes to make that argument, I can do so in a way that's concise and doesn't take 20 minutes to get to the point.
Yep.
This is never going to be that, because I sit down and you bring up a topic that I've casually looked at and I just spout my opinion for a while. Because I'm not, like, I don't have a list prepared in advance of here are the 3 specific bullet points I want to bring up about this article. It's, looked at it, came up with an opinion on it, sort of talked it through with you. This is ideally more of a conversation, but
kind of a stream of consciousness type.
Also, this thing about, like, we're posting a link too often. Like, do conservatives not know how to not look at things?
No, they apparently don't know how to ignore things that they don't like.
And like,
they literally have to control everything.
When, again, maybe this is like a talking point. When the left says, hey, can you give us a heads up before you graphically describe a trauma that I personally have gone through and causes me emotional distress? Like, you're not allowed to say it. Just, hey, can you give me a heads up before you say it?
They flip out.
That's unreasonable. But just like, hey, once a week, you share a link to a thing you do every week. That's
too much.
Just don't click on it. I don't. You don't have to, like, if someone wants to listen to the podcast or watch us on YouTube, that's awesome. I love the fact that people actually care what we have to say. Sometimes I'm baffled why, but it is what it is.
They only care because we're pissing them off.
Could be. If they're just all rage listening, that's fine too, I guess. Don't rage quit. Spite win.
That's right.
So I just... But again, don't. If it's causing you anger, if it's literally ruining your day listening to Cory and I chat,
then you don't have to.
Yeah, go listen to another 4 hours of John Gormley and hear him repeat your opinion back to you. That's you can do that every single day if that's all you want. If you really just want, because you can listen to
multiple times a day. You can do that.
Yeah, because it's what shows 4 hours long, and they play it twice a day, 5 days a week. So that's 40 hours. You can listen to 40 hours of John Gormley a week instead of the 1 hour of me and you. So
that's right.
That's.
I'm sorry we invaded your week.
It comes back to the talking point thing too, though, right? Like no one, we're like, I don't know, man. I just do people. I guess maybe we do. Maybe we do get upset at John Gormley just for parroting the talking points of the Conservative Party. So maybe that's like you and I are not the equivalent of John Gormley. No one's paying us that type of money.
That would be fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Imagine the production quality on this show if we got paid what John Gormley got paid.
But anyways, no, it's weird. And like it, this is not a Saskatchewan specific story, but it sort of links in with Danielle Smith having her flounce from Chorus Radio having the temper tantrum out the door.
I don't know this.
You didn't hear about? Okay, so no. Just published this is leaving the station and published this big long manifesto about she's quitting because her free speech is she can no longer have free speech while working on the radio.
So she wants to say more racist things? Is that what it is?
I believe that is the issue.
That's almost always what it is. I'm not.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is like it's not like Chorus Radio. Well, one, it's not like Chorus Radio is the government. So no, it's not censorship. It's a private company that you are literally being the spokesperson for. Yes, as an editorial role, giving opinions. But like your employer gets to have a say on what you say while you're at work, right? Like if you go up to McDonald's and order a Big Mac and they tell you to go fuck yourself. Like they don't.
That employee is going to get fired.
That's not protected free speech. In fact, if you don't say, "Would you like fries?" If you don't even just not go fuck yourself. If you don't try and upsell, if you don't use the specific scripting they give you in certain cases, depending on your job. So the fact that a radio host was hired to parrot certain talking points. And was fine with it for years, and just now disagrees with the talking points that she was directed to not parrot anymore.
Right.
Like that's not an infringement on free speech. No. That's like you disagree with your employer on your job. You don't like your job anymore. And that's fine. Like good on her for having the moral fortitude to stand up against people telling her not to be racist.
Sure.
Or whatever. I joke I joke. I shouldn't. I don't know what specifically they told her what not to do.
Assuming she came around to a more left leaning perspective, and
that
suddenly,
could be it too. Yeah.
In this case, I feel bad that she has to quit her job because she disagrees with her boss.
Sure.
But still, this is how this goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I do suspect it isn't, because it wasn't Chorus. It was the American version, whichever one all the American talk radio folks are on. The very next day, it was leaked that they had given direction to all of their on-air radio personalities to tone down the rhetoric. Basically, this was right after the Capitol push.
Yeah.
So, they basically directed their talk radio guys to maybe tone down the rhetoric, be a little less racist, maybe don't call for violent insurrection anymore. So I don't like.
So she didn't have like a
timing
of
her
heart.
quitting. The timing of her quitting was probably just a coincidence, and shitty for her that it was. But that was how the timing worked out. So, but anyways, it was one of those ones where I'm like, this weird sort of dichotomy of where the line on speech comes in just seems so baffling to me. So. But we should probably actually talk about the news.
Yes, I suppose. Going on and on about this.
People are going to think we don't want them commenting. We do. Please do comment.
Yes,
please
absolutely
come engage with us.
Yes. Even if you disagree with us.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you do find us repeating a talking point, and especially it's one that you can come up with concrete ways of disproving, please do, because my opinion on many, many things has definitely changed a lot over the years. Certain things not so much, but yeah. So yeah, I love it when I'm proven wrong on things.
I do have to commend Das Richard on YouTube. He watched the most recent video, and he said, thanks for the reply. He thought we were fair. And Good. He said, yeah, we might end up ultimately just disagreeing on something like this, but
yeah,
good on us for actually talking through his points.
Good. No, it's and like I said, on that stuff, absolutely. Like, I just again discussing minimum wage with someone recently. That was one of those things that came up on like yes, my fundamental foundation for some of my reasons why wanting it higher are based on a certain moral framework, but I can understand and listen to people who have a different logical progression that goes from there. Someone says, well, it'll cause unemployment, and unemployment is also bad. And I agree, right? Like unemployment causes people to not have money. And we can talk about other ways of mitigating that, like UBI and various things. But in the world we have right now, the trade-off of higher wage versus higher unemployment, that's a policy discussion. You can look at numbers and you can look at facts and data and have a reasonable debate on that, and I don't mind. But anyways, I appreciated the feedback he gave us, and I'm glad to hear that he appreciated the response we gave to him.
Yep. All right.
So what's new in the world that we want to talk about?
Do we want to start at the most recent stuff or the slightly older stuff?
Let's go recent. I think most of the older stuff falls into that category if we have time to touch base on. None of it seems super urgent, because otherwise we would have talked about it at the time.
Yes, that's right. So we have, let's see, Saskatchewan petition calls minister removal. Petition presented at Sask legislature calls for corrections minister's removal. I'm going to throw this up on the screen with us so that we are. There we are. Petition presented it. And so this petition was presented at the Sask legislature. It had 4,000. At the time of this, it says 1,700 people, signatures, and 40 organizations. So, I mean, it's not insignificant.
Right.
I believe, I don't know if this is in this article. But I did read a response on Twitter from one Scott Moe, our premier. They are not going. I should look it up, but they are not going to let criminals free. Is basically the quote that he had.
Yeah.
I also saw a lawyer on Twitter saying that there are 940 currently, I guess incarcerated in remand, people who are facing trial and are not convicted criminals. So this is framing this as letting criminals free seems like a misstep at the very least.
Yep.
This petition was all promoted by NDP justice critic Nicole Soar. Do you know how to say this?
I believe it's Sour, but I
okay.
I could be incorrect on that, so I'm not.
I look at the spelling, and I'm terrible at names, so I apologize.
I'd be interested to see the Scott Moe quote because I haven't seen the actual verbatim quote. Again, this is one of those weird. This is one of those free speech things where media always has to be very cautious about referring to people as alleged, and if Scott Moe were to have done something that he wasn't found guilty of, the media has to be careful about always saying alleged. But for him,
yes,
he has no consequences for being able to call 900 some odd people who haven't been convicted of any crime, have only been charged as criminals.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is where I go back to my talking point of then why isn't he putting himself in jail? Because if that's how he feels, he's got a fair bit of accountability left. So that he never spent time in jail for the woman he's killed and the drinking and driving he's done. So I don't know, man. See, talking point.
Yeah, that's right. Premier Scott Moe, the NDP and advocates are calling for the release of criminals from jail and are calling for Minister Tell's resignation because she won't. And then Minister Tell's position is the position of our government. We will not release criminals that have been sentenced by a court of law as the NDP wants. Corrections staff will continue their diligence in fighting outbreaks when they occur.
Okay. Yeah. So the fact that it's not calling the people in remand criminals. It's just misrepresenting what is being asked for.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this is a topic where I am super left wing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I think we've talked about this like 3 or 4 weeks now.
Yeah.
On some level, on some level, all the people in remand should for sure be sent home, so that if they can avoid contracting COVID-19. They're not sentenced people; they need to be out. If people are in,
and if they were rich, they would be.
Yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. That's right. Yeah, because
our bail system isn't the same as what it is in the U.S. We don't have the same bail system the United States has, but this is, the remand system is still incredibly, incredibly flawed, and incredibly biased.
Yeah. So, let's see. Tell said she was concerned some inmates are trying to use COVID-19 as a get out of jail free card. Quote, it would be a disservice to victims and breach of my duty to maintain public safety to grant leave to inmates who would not otherwise meet the stringent public safety criteria in place for early release. Tell's statement said that the government implemented COVID-19 measures recommended by the Provincial Health Authority and outlined some changes made to accommodate inmate concerns, including 10 minutes extra for phone calls, masks, soap, cleaning supplies are all provided free of charge, and controlled access was granted to hand sanitizer. Controlled access?
Because it's the alcohol base.
Okay. So they're assuming that they're going to abuse it as a
matter of course. This is the thing that, like, you listen to that and it's like, we are now giving them soap. Think about the implications of that. We are now allowing them to have soap.
Yeah, that they don't have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
They might have been able to get it before if they could pay for it.
Yeah. We're now letting them have cleaning supplies. We're now letting them have soap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much else to say.
No, and again, like, I am probably about as far to the left on this topic as you can get, because in my mind, probably somewhere between 95 and 99% of the people who are currently incarcerated should not be. I like.
Yeah, I'm confident that they're not all hardened criminals who have done damage that's irreparable and they cannot be, rehabilitated into society in some reasonable way.
My end, like, sort of when you come up with, like, sort of theories of justice, there's lots of different ones, and I don't want to start getting into sort of really in depth, like, sociology 200 stuff, or criminal justice 200, but like, at its core, essentially any sort of justice system is going to be trying to keep people safe, is trying to, can do a couple things, but the primary ones are keeping people safe, punishing people, and reforming people. Jail is really only good at that middle one for the vast majority of cases. It is almost never required for keeping people safe. And it is one of the worst possible ways of preventing crime in the future, one of the worst possible ways of reforming someone, quote unquote, reforming someone, really is just purely there to punish. At its core, when people get upset, we have that sort of lizard brain, monkey brain, like, must punish wrongdoers. Like, it feels good to do that, right? And
vengeance.
Like, we get caught up in it when it's the quote unquote other side, right? I can't count the number of people who over the last week have thrown out all of their moral objections to all sorts of things when it comes to these yahoos down in the States. So you've seen all sorts of people on the left sort of abandon a lot of their, what had previously been their core values and principles when it comes to these yahoos who stormed the Capitol. All of a sudden, they don't have a problem with the no-fly list. All of a sudden, due process isn't important. All of these things that for 20 years we've been saying, no, these are morally bankrupt ideas. I would say if we are going to have them for anyone, yes, we should also be having them for these red cap terrorists as well. But like, that doesn't mean we should have them at all.
Right.
But it feels good. Like, and don't get me wrong, I'm a human being. I think the no-fly list conceptually, both as first principle as well as implementation, is immoral and unjust and unethical. It is a bad policy, especially the implementation side of it. That said, when I see a bunch of white supremacists and Trump insurrectionists, literally crying on the floor of the airport doing the temper tantrum thing, there's a certain degree of visceral joy I get from that.
Yeah, it's hard to not have that Schadenfreude type reaction.
And there's evolutionary reasons for why we all have that type of feeling deep in our core. It's to maintain social cohesion. But I think a lot of the reason why people are so reluctant to have jail be anything other than a horrible punishment is because of that, right? Is because we like, as much as we might want that not to be the case, the idea of punishing wrongdoers is such a pervasive evolutionary need that I would like to think we can get past. But our pop culture feeds into it as well, right? Like it's we like seeing the wrongdoers punished. And when it comes to this, it doesn't keep people safer. And I think the only time incarceration should be used is if it is absolutely necessary for public safety, where there is a significant chance of that person committing a crime again. And harming not just committing harm, but harming another person. Again, we should be treating drug offenses as health issues, not criminal offenses.
Yes.
Like that alone eliminates much of the overcrowding.
A lot of the minor petty crimes like theft or drug dealing, or a lot of issues are surrounding poverty as well, right? Like 100%. We should be focusing on some poverty issues. Why did you have to steal that? Yeah. What was the issue that made you steal that? Yeah. How can we remedy this situation? Instead, we put them in jail and call them a criminal.
Yeah. And again, I will say it every time. You can tell how much someone actually believes in law and order and public safety by suggesting that mandatory jail sentences for speeding. Right? Again, I don't think anyone should go to jail, but if we're going to put people in jail, I'd rather them go to jail for speeding than for doing drugs. I have sped in the past, but I can guarantee you I wouldn't if I knew I had to go to jail for it. So that is a crime where you actually would see increased safety by having, a punitive aspect to the criminal justice system. But no one wants that because affluent people speed.
Yep.
Right? Like affluent people who are adults, take the thrill-seeking element out of it. So the rich 13-year-old who goes and shoplifts, that's a little different. Right. But they don't see jail time either, though. But for the most part, affluent people don't shoplift. That's not a crime that comes up. And affluent people almost never go to jail for drug use.
Yep, that's right.
Right?
They almost never see police in their neighborhoods unless they're the ones calling them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I guarantee you, the affluent 20-year-old who is doing a number of illegal drugs a lot harder than pot has not a care in the world that they are going to go to jail for it. Not a risk at all. If you I used to go to a lot of raves when I was younger. I could guarantee you I could have walked up to any of the myriad of people I saw doing all sorts of illegal things there and said, "Hey, do you think there's any chance of you going to jail for that?" And they would laugh. Right. The only possibility would be if there was an actual overdose, in which case still probably not. They would go to the hospital, mommy and daddy would show up. And again, these are adults. So when I say mommy and daddy, I'm meaning the mommy and daddy of an adult.
Yeah, that's right.
Would show up, make sure that this is treated as a medical issue, not a criminal issue. They could say, "Oh, I didn't know what I was taking. Someone must have slipped it into my drink," and no one, the police wouldn't even bother. Right? Yeah. No, if a rich white 20-year-old goes to the general from an overdose, from being at a rave, and says, "Oh, I didn't do any drugs. I was drinking Coca-Cola though, and maybe someone slipped something into my Coca-Cola," they're not going to jail. They're not facing consequences. Maybe they'll have to go to rehab, But
yeah,
I would wager the overwhelming majority of people incarcerated in Saskatchewan are there for crimes no more harmful to the general public than that. In many cases, like just as trivial. So, again, we're starting. I'd say we're beating a dead horse, and maybe this is the talk again. This is that talking point they're talking.
Yeah,
about.
like I don't know. Maybe we're just repeating the same 3 points. Feels like our reasoning is sound to me.
Yeah.
If somebody would attack the reasoning,
yeah.
if somebody would attack the reasoning and maybe not just accuse us of using talking points, I can listen to that. You know.
Yeah. And the other issue, again, with speaking of prisons, if you're not letting people out, ensure they're vaccinated first. Like that, they are literally high risk. This is, it is, and not by choice.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So, in my mind, that has to be at the front of the line for vaccination. If you're not letting people out on their own recognizance, or checking in with parole, all sorts of other ways of doing this safely. If you can't do that, I think at the very least you need to be vaccinated first. And if I'll even make a right-wing argument on this. I'll put on my right-wing hat and not my compassionate hat. Let's save the province money, because if you don't do this, you're opening yourself up to lawsuits and opening the taxpayer up to lawsuits. And even if you end up winning those lawsuits, if the provincial government ends up winning those, you're still costing the taxpayer significant money fighting this in court. So if you are willingly and intentionally not taking the precautions you need to while there are people who are incarcerated, and this goes to courts, like that is not a cheap trial. That is not a cheap court case. So
yeah, that's right.
So let's put on, again, we can be frugal. We'll fiscally responsible.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So what do we want to cover next?
Dealer's choice. What do you want to we are running into one, there's lots of news that's happening. But similar to the issue with the jails, it's a lot of its continuations of previous things, like COVID, all sorts of COVID news.
Lots of COVID things.
The more deaths, more cases, very, very little good news other than, the vaccine side of things.
Let's talk about the Sask government announcing $4 million in funding for the WHL and SJHL.
All right. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So I don't know if we'll agree or disagree on this.
All right. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay.
I know that typically on the left we're of the opinion that why are you prioritizing sports when you could be doing all these things to fix society? I'm of the opinion that art and sports are still important. I am also of the opinion that this is the Saskatchewan government doing a communism, whether they like it or not.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes.
I always talk about sports as the one area where left and right flip. All of a sudden, I shouldn't say that, because it is still technically not a communism, because it's government funding of private industry. So it's still
not for all of these teams. Some of these are community-owned teams.
Yes, the ones that are community-owned, that is different.
That's a literal communism.
Yeah, that is the riders are a literal communism too.
Take that, Saskatchewan.
Green is the new red.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it is that thing where, money spent on culture seems to be like, again, like sports doesn't get seen as part of culture by either the left or the right. Typically, they view it that seems to make it more positive when the right looks at it and less positive when the left looks at it. But essentially, sports is just part of culture. I tend to be torn when it's going to private industry. If this was like NHL, I would be at that point when it's a heavily profit making leagues. That's different. No, I'm somewhat torn on it. I think it's probably more positive than negative. Typically, what I would like to see is when this type of thing happens, there be that the governments require more in concessions from the private industries they are supporting, even when it's community owned, even when it's smaller. What are you doing to then turn around and give back to the community? And a lot of these sports teams do. Like the Pats are pretty great for doing a lot of community outreach. But I think possibly having some of that stuff in writing on how that then comes into play. I think that's. Anyways, I think you can go that route when you're doing it, as opposed to just giving cash. But no, I think we're actually relatively similar minded. I was expecting to be different.
I fucking love this. Actually, this is when I get to go, hey, conservatives, do you know that you're doing communism? Nothing makes me smile more than doing communism in real life. Not just because I get to rub it in people's faces, but because this is what I believe in. I believe that the community should be owning things, and as a community, we should be supporting our cultures and our sports and everything that we do. So,
and again, for me, my support for it increases as the level of professionalism decreases. It's one of those, like, if you're
That's fair.
The more amateur something is, the more I'm supportive of government funds going into it. But I think at this level of play, you're not dealing, like, the owners, like ones that aren't community owned, the owners are not billionaires.
Right, they're not.
I don't even know the names of most WHL owners. I'm assuming most are ownership groups rather than individual owners. And I can't imagine there are, a lot of billionaires owning WHL teams or SJHL teams. But
like you say, when it's an NHL team, you go, okay, well, but he's like super fucking rich and owns this team. Like, I don't care if he loses a little bit of money. Yeah. When it's a community, if it's a small group, then you got to be on. You got to be out for helping them.
Yeah, and it's not expensive. It's not tons of money. Like,
no, that's right.
$4 million is not pocket change, but we're not dealing with $200 million to do a stadium renovation or something like that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, damn it, we agree
again. Damn it. Okay. What else we got? Okay, so I will. There was a tweet this morning from, I think it was the same doctor that you follow on Facebook. Dr. Kyle
Anderson? Kyle Anderson is a professor, so he's
okay. I'm not sure. But I saw this tweet by a doctor on Twitter discussing a Facebook post, which somebody was at the Tap in Regina videoing a bunch of people maskless, wandering around, dancing together with different people from different tables. And this was like my reaction was like very frustrated and angry and disappointed in the people who might attend something like this. And apparently, it was a video of the children of the owners and friends of the owners. So because of the tap, so I guess apparently because these are people that are in a position of privilege, they feel that they don't have to adhere to the guidelines. And I'm also not a big fan of like narking on people, but I'm glad that this video is out there and for the public to see now.
Yeah.
And it didn't make me happy.
No. We've talked about this before too. This frustration where, again, it's the tragedy of the commons. It's if we all just fucking did what we needed to.
Yeah. But apparently that's too hard.
Yeah. If we all had this level of restriction, we would probably be fine. But if we all of a sudden have someone go down here and do no restrictions at all, like most people are listening rather than watching, so you don't see my hands. But like, if we all had low key levels of restrictions on what we did, we were all low key responsible right from the beginning, and no one thought they were better than the restrictions, we would be able to keep things pretty low key. But because we have selfish assholes who feel the need to not follow rules other people have to follow, the rules get stricter for those who do follow. Yeah. And like, just because, and this is comes up in so many areas, just because sometimes a line is blurry doesn't mean there isn't a line. Right. There are going to be some things where what you do versus what I do versus what someone else does, we're all going to have little nuances on where we are trying to be safe, where we're not, interpretations of the rules, where exactly do things fall. As far as, you're not allowed to go over to, a single person's house. Like if 3 individuals who are all living alone and all 3 of them meet and they're in a bubble and 2 of them go to one person's house and then 2 of them go to a different person's house, but they're only encountering each other and it's just those 3 people. And they're being very restrictive about who else is outside that bubble. Technically, I believe that still violates the rules because it's more than one household joining one other household. But in my mind, that's a edge case. It's probably fine if they're making that call for themselves. And again, they're taking other steps. But it's when things are blatantly flaunted, when things are both violating the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, like. I'm kind of like, if you do one of the two, I'm not going to get as angry. If you're technically violating the letter of the law, but you're staying true to the spirit of the law, you know what? Sure. If you're staying true to the letter of the law, but violating the spirit of the law, then I'm probably going to be more angry at whoever wrote the law rather than the person finding that loophole.
Right.
Probably a little bit at both, but it's these yahoos who feel the need to break both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law.
There's that zero nuance that guy was talking about.
Yeah. Well, I am up for nuance, but just because, again, it's just because there's nuance on an issue doesn't mean just because sometimes some issues have a gray area doesn't mean there isn't also black and white on either side of that gray area.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's what some of these things come down to.
I hate the narrative that it is young people partying that is causing the outbreak to sustain itself. And yet, sometimes that is the case.
Yep.
So you can both as a non-nuance, zero nuance leftist, I can 100% acknowledge that these look like young people in this video breaking the rules and causing, probably, if one of them had COVID, then they're all going to have it now. It's gonna transmit to a bunch of people who will transmit it further, and that's gonna be a problem. And also, I can say this is not all young people. This is not all the people that you're going to encounter. Not hashtag not all young people, but actually not all young people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it's frustrating. And again, I haven't been to the tap in years. I think that might happen. It might be a little longer now still. So
I was there. I pick up orders there regularly as a skip driver. So don't fire me. Hey folks, just Cory here, just doing a quick interjection. The story on the Tap Pub and Grill and the people who were dancing in the bar with no masks and around various other tables. I'm not sure if people have seen it, but there has been an apology issued by the Tap ownership, and some people believe it, some people do not. I think it's important to recognize that if an establishment makes a mistake, then they can apologize for that, and we will acknowledge it. But we didn't want to leave this story in without acknowledging the apology on their Facebook page. Thanks. Yeah, just a little.
It's
fun.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
What else we want? Mild weather. That's always fun.
Mild weather. Yes.
Although ridiculous, super intense storm, but in general milder.
Yeah.
Supposed to be colder and snowier.
I believe this article was before the snows and winds the other day. Their couple days.
They jinxed it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They actually, I think in this article, they did actually predict a little bit of it. And they say that despite the mild temperatures, we are supposed to be expecting our, La Nina, that is going to cause us to have a colder and snowier winter for the rest of the winter and then farther into the spring.
Right.
Which, I mean, sucks.
Yeah.
But
it is one of those funny things where I guarantee you when we do get a cold snap, all of the climate change denialists are going to use that as evidence that global warming and climate change isn't happening, but are going to completely conveniently forget the warm patch. Yes. Count your hits and,
100%.
Ignore the misses. And we need to make sure we're not doing the same thing on the converse. Like the warm, lovely weather we've had. When thinking about the episode, I'm like, all right, do we talk about this being evidence for climate change? It probably isn't. Individual weather events are not evidence of climate change in isolation. You can only see climate change when taken in aggregate and looked at statistically over a long period of time, because any single event doesn't denote a pattern. That's right. But
on that note, 2020 was not the warmest year on record, but it was the second warmest year on record, where 2016 was still the warmest. But the last 5 years have all been the warmest years on record. So we are, if we want to talk about climate change, that's where we can see it.
Yeah.
We won't see it because just this winter is not necessarily climate change, but
Yep. So
overall 2020 and the last few years have all been pretty major differences.
Yep. So we'll see what ends up happening weather-wise. Hopefully it does stay milder, both on a personal level, but also on that political level, saving some snow removal budget and all that good stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. I'm one of these people that, despite growing up here, I'm always fine with a brown Christmas. I'm always fine I'm always fine with mild temperatures.
I was trying to think the other day if I've ever had a brown Christmas, and I can't remember if I've ever had one, or a green one either. So I'm sure I must have at some point. But what do we want? Oh, CRA has a bunch of checks to give out. That's good news.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Which means, because that was a news story, because CRA has checks to give out, there will be spam calls and spam emails. You will get phishing calls. You will get phishing emails of people claiming to be CRA wanting to give you your check because they know people will have seen it on the news, and so they will exploit that to do phishing scams.
Yep.
So if someone phones you or emails you, that's not CRA. Or even if it is, you're safer to ignore them and then phone the actual CRA number from the phone book, or go to their actual CRA website.
Yeah, that's right.
Do not believe someone if they are phoning you.
Yeah, so CRA adds $500,000 a day to its pile of uncashed checks waiting for their owners.
Yeah.
Yeah, like apparently this, I mean, on some level I knew this was always a thing because I've worked with mail in the past and I still currently am related to the mail system in some ways. So I see government checks go to people's mailboxes. I see them go back. I see them, sit in mailboxes for weeks, months.
Yeah.
So I know that people aren't cashing their checks.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that there's a lot of money there.
Yeah.
For Canadians who are entitled to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not as if you're taking it like from the tax pool, because this money is already set aside. So it's just sitting there doing nothing right now. So it's not like, I'm doing the government, I'm being nice to the government by not claiming it. Nope.
No, if you don't claim it, it's just wasted. It's just sitting there not being claimed.
Absolutely. Were there any news articles about, and I don't think I saw any recent ones, excuse me, vaccine about new rollouts?
I did. I don't recall, actually.
Fair enough. It's one of those things that's sort of been
I know that
in the background for a while now. So I heard someone really angry about it, but I'll share that in a moment.
Was that right?
Yeah, I'll share that story in a moment. And just
sure. If somebody follows the Regina or the Saskatchewan subreddits on Reddit, there is an image shared, I think, every single day with all the numbers and the breakdown. And I think that we are currently at over 16,000 vaccinations.
Perfect.
But again, I'm not sure where that sits in relation to what we've gotten and, what else is happening with the other vaccines.
So this is one of those ones where just breaks my brain, because this wasn't from everything I could tell, this wasn't from an anti-masker. This is someone who believes that COVID is real. They're not anti-vax. They believe in vaccinations.
Okay.
But they found out that the federal government has arranged for 80 million total doses of the vaccine, and we're super, super angry that we bought too many.
What? That we bought too many?
That we bought too many doses of the vaccine.
Okay, but why?
I think where they're coming from is they're in their mind, this was, that's more than we need, so we're just going to end up giving it away to other people. And so it's Canadians buying vaccines for people in other countries.
And that's bad.
But I think so. But also,
okay.
Well, we only have blah, blah, you need 2 doses. Mm-hmm. So 80 million doses is enough to vaccinate 40 million people, which is more than we have. But there's you're going to have distribution issues, logistic issues. You're going to have a little bit more in one place. And if you don't give yourself that cushion, it means you will run out in other places, especially since some of these vaccines have, incredibly challenging storage requirements. And because the 80 million is the total between the Moderna and the Pfizer.
Okay. So our population, according to this, in 2019 was 37.6 million people.
Yep.
At 2 vaccines per person.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of extras there.
No. And not everyone's going to get vaccinated because not everyone can be. And some people will say no for moral and philosophical. And some people have allergies or whatnot and just can't be vaccinated. But yeah, it was one of those things like, this is where I shake my head sometimes at the province because what it was they wanted to be angry at Trudeau. Like,
oh, well, I mean, that's easy. There's no UBI yet.
Right. But like,
where's our financial support?
If Trudeau is doing something, they want to be angry for it. And like, I don't like Trudeau.
Come on, be mad at him for a good reason, though. Come on.
I have been finding myself wanting to defend him, and I hate feeling like I have to defend Trudeau. God, do I hate feeling like I have to defend Trudeau. Because I've been like, I have voted for the Liberal Party in several elections in my life. It's not like I haven't been a Liberal Party supporter. And I have been both on the left side and the right side of the Liberal Party at various times over the year. I've even voted federally conservative once.
Oh, geez, yeah.
It was when Joe Clark was the leader. I really liked Joe Clark. So this tells you how long ago it was. The second time he was the leader, not the first time. I'm not that.
Well, you have more claim to the anti-conservative train than I do, technically.
It's not like I'm hugely opposed to defending the guy, but I really hate defending the guy. But sometimes the attacks are just, you can tell it's people looking for things to attack. The other one was he was asked about the border, and this is stupid. Why is it possible for Canadians to fly to the States but not drive to the States and come back?
Yep.
That's stupid. And he was asked about it, and his answer, it was a Trudeau-ish answer, right? So he has that sort of weird verbal affectation. We sometimes forget English is his second language, so he's not a like, English isn't his first language, and that sometimes comes through, and you can sometimes see that when he's thinking. But he gave the correct, true answer, which is we don't get to tell the Americans what to do. We have a lot more control over land borders. We can say they can't fly here, but we can't say Canadians can't fly there because it's the destination country that determines that. Once they're there, we can't refuse them re-entry back into the country because they're Canadian citizens. Or if we do, that's very difficult from a long-term legal thing. It is very difficult to say, no Canadians, Mr. Canadian citizen, you are not allowed to return back to your country of citizenship for the next 6 months. Because eventually he'll get kicked out of the US, right? He will just not be allowed to stay after a certain period of time. And again, there's challenge. And you know what? If you're flying to Florida knowing full well those rules are in place and told when you leave you're not allowed to come back, it is somewhat your responsibility for figuring that out. At the same time, it becomes really difficult for the Canadian government to say, no, you have to stay in wherever now for the next however many months this pandemic lasts.
They are technically our citizens and our responsibility.
Exactly. Right? So like, he as politely as possible, and it wasn't even that, he was pretty blunt about, we can't tell the Americans what to do, but essentially the rules are, we can control the land border, we can't control the flight.
Yeah, we can stand there and block somebody from coming and going at the drive-through.
And it just comes down to international agreements and how our border works with the U.S. and all of that. But again, it was just people losing them and saying like, Trudeau once again not answering the question. And I was just like, no. You can not like his answer. You can say, no, we should be doing more on one border or doing less on the other. Like you can not like his answer, but he didn't answer the question. I'm like, no, you're just choosing not to hear it. I find
like you say, like I think there might be some legitimate room for criticism within that answer, even.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not. That's never how it goes.
No.
I'm sorry, Saskatchewan Conservatives, but I cannot take your criticism of Trudeau seriously as long as you have the "fuck Trudeau" sticker on your truck. I'm sorry, I just can't do it.
One last bit of federal topic before we maybe return a little bit to provincial.
Sure.
The Aaron O'Toole interview where he was really, really angry that people keep comparing him to Donald Trump.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, no, he's pissed. He is not happy.
Maybe he shouldn't have said "Make Canada Great Again."
Yeah, the responses I'm seeing are pretty universally. Well, if you don't want people to compare you to Donald Trump, maybe you should stop acting like him. Yeah. But yeah, no, that was my most recent sort of like. He said it in an interview with Rebel Media.
Right? Yes.
So I was like,
yes,
not quite getting the irony. Yeah, not quite getting the irony.
Yeah. I did see that he was going to do an interview with Rebel Media, the exact media organization that Andrew Scheer distanced himself from after a variety of racial issues.
Well, the media organization with links to the Proud Boys, I would be very, very shocked if we don't find more and more links to Donald Trump and with all that other stuff going on down. Like,
I have often said that while John Gormley is the Canadian Rush Limbaugh, Ezra Levant is the Canadian Alex Jones.
Yeah, I'll give you that. There's a couple others that I would, yeah.
He's exactly as full of shit.
Yeah. There are problematic elements to that comparison, just with Levant being Jewish and how.
I suppose
how heavy into the anti-Semitism the Alex Jones conspiracy theories dip their toes. So that I can, but
Ezra Levant also he really touches on a lot of those same conspiracy theories. So it's
he's almost more like the better comparison might almost be to Ben Shapiro. I don't think he's as smart as Ben Shapiro.
Not that Ben Shapiro is smart.
No. Both of again, this is both of them will both of them have found themselves attacked by their own allies because of their Jewishness. All of a sudden go,
that's true.
Oh wait, I'm surrounded by a bunch of anti-Semites. Who would have thought Nazis would be anti-Semitic?
Go figure.
Right. So that was where the one comparison, I don't. Yeah. Anyways, this is where far afield. Getting into.
You can tell. Yeah, we're getting into this the weeds a little bit here.
I know you have other far better podcasts that go a bit more broader spectrum that you can talk about these things. I'll stick to Saskatchewan stuff. But, maybe the last topic for the night, because I think we had some technical difficulties, so I can't really tell exactly how long we've gone, but I'm guessing we're close to the hour.
Yeah, we'll end up slightly over the hour, but not by too much.
We're losing people again.
Yes.
Still, I guess.
Still. This has been, again, I think, a consistent issue with ever since the initial oil drop.
Yeah. The growth stopped, but the this is the only the second quarter. For the first time in 14 years, we've had the shrinkage, and it's 2 quarters in a row.
This has to be at least partially COVID related, right? because because one of our major growth factors is immigration.
Yeah.
And if we aren't letting people from other countries come and live here because of COVID issues, then I suspect that that's part of what's happening.
Yeah, that could very well be. I wasn't thinking of that part of it. It's like, well, no, not enough people have died from COVID for that big of a drop in population. But yeah, the reduction in immigration certainly would have an impact on it. But like, just again, it's as a share of total population, the third quarter decrease in Saskatchewan ranks behind only that in Newfoundland. The numbers of people living in the other two prairie provinces, Alberta and Manitoba, continued to rise. So it's not like Alberta and Manitoba didn't also have COVID issues.
Right.
Let alone BC, Ontario, Quebec, etc. And for most of last year, we were actually getting hit less bad than a lot of other places. Now we're getting hit worse than everyone now. But yeah, it's I don't know if you can attribute all of it to COVID. And what's interesting as well is,
I suppose it says right here, the COVID-19 pandemic appears to have stalled overall growth in Canada. Right. So the immigration issue affects everybody.
Yeah. It's affecting us worse than everyone else. It's affecting Saskatchewan worse than everyone else, with the exception of Newfoundland. So Newfoundland's getting hit worse than we are, than Saskatchewan. I haven't looked at the exact number. So like second last place, but only by fractions of a percent. I'm less worried about it. If there was a big gap between us and some of the median, that would be a bit different. What's interesting is the Saskatchewan Party government had made population growth such a huge central theme in its messaging, in its talking points, if you will, for the last decade.
That's one of the things when they first got in was like, when it was still NDP, that was all over John Gormley's show. We're at 1 million people, we're stagnating, we're losing people by the droves. We got to get a new party in to get people to stay here and to get more people draw them in.
Yeah, which again is a false narrative, because the population had already started increasing when the Conservative Party took over, or Sask Party took over. So it's ignoring data and trends. But who's really surprised at Gormley not understanding how graphs work?
I 100% think he understands them.
Yes, sure. Touche. I 100% believe he used to understand them.
That's true.
I have a lot of faith in the power of willful ignorance. He has untaught himself a lot of things, because things he used to know and things he used to believe didn't fit his narrative, and he has legitimately taught himself to not believe those things anymore, which again, we talk about changing your mind on things as a positive, but I think I think the John Gormley of 20 years ago would be ashamed of the John Gormley today. I honestly do. I think if he could travel in a time machine and meet himself today, he
listen
would,
to his show.
I think he would be ashamed of himself. With the change of tone that he has had over 20 years. Because I used to listen to Gormley all the time. I was an avid listener and disagreed with him on a lot of things. I had called in a number of times. I've been a guest on the show, not just as a call-in, but been invited to be on the show. Right. And had good discussions with him. And I don't know if I probably still would go on if invited, if there was an issue to talk about. But I'd be a lot more hesitant today than I was, because again, as I talked at the very, very beginning of our podcast today, that difference between discussing things with people who argue in good faith versus those who argue in bad faith. Yeah. I kind of do think that is a lot of his rhetorical style has changed from being good faith discussions with people he disagrees with, and I disagree with him on, but they were still good faith discussions around topics he was passionate about, to bad faith scoring of points.
Yep.
And again, that willful ignorance, the choosing not to understand how graphs work because they don't fit his narrative. So
yeah, it's the Facebook or Fox News effect or whatever that. Yeah, like it's I don't know. I often say that it's broken people's ability to like think about the issues that they're actually talking about.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I guess like, and it's good when we get held accountable on that front too, because again, we can fall prey to it. So like coming back full circle to the very start of the show today, I'm still glad when people do point stuff out. I'll take some criticisms more seriously than other, but
yes, yeah. I mean, we're not immune, right?
Yeah.
And it's the illusion that you're immune that leads to these kinds of mistakes and changes in behavior, I guess.
Yeah,
but. That's a bit of a somber note.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, which allows us to segue into if someone does want to give us feedback on all the things that we got wrong tonight, how can they do that, Cory?
They can follow us on anchor.fm/FromManyPeoples, and there should be a button. If you go to anchor.fm, there should be a button where you can leave us a voice message.
Ooh.
There should, I will double check that, but just if you go to anchor.fm/FromManyPeoples, leave us a voice message if you can. That would be super cool, and we will play it on the show.
And if you don't want us to play it on the show, say so in the voice message.
Yes, that's right.
I'd like to leave you a voice message. Don't play this on the show.
Don't play this on the show. And then we won't.
Yes, and then we won't if you say not to. We will respect that.
Yeah, and you can follow us on Twitter at SKPoliticsPod. I don't know. This probably doesn't help our credentials with the people who think we're just left-wing trolls who are using talking points. But Ryan Miley followed us today on Twitter.
Wow.
So that's cool.
Now I need to actually pay attention to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, let's save that for next week. Talk about how the fact that Ryan Miley was actually going out giving people vaccines. Like himself was actually administering vaccines as a doctor. So I thought that was cool.
I saw pictures of that today, but we should definitely add that in the notes for next week. If you want to follow us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/FromManyPeoplesStrengthPod. And if you want to email us, it's FromManyPeoples@gmail.com. So that's it.
That's it. Well, thank you once again, Cory. And I look forward to chatting with you again in a week.
You bet. See you next time.
Take care.